right, John. All right. On behalf of the agency, I'm here to show you our new commercial.
The network. What is the network? The network is the most powerful digital system ever created. The network is experienced as a seamless virtual world of endless possibilities. What makes the network so appealing? You can do just about anything in the network. Things that would never be possible in the physical world are commonplace here. What can you do in the network? The network is the ideal place to begin your new life. Here, you can choose how you want to live, be the person you always wanted to be. You are not limited to your pitiful physical self. There are endless forms of entertainment in the network. Anything you can imagine can be provided here. But when will I have time to experience the network? Time moves differently in the network. What may be hours in the network are mere minutes in the physical world. What does that mean for me? It means you can get more things done, have more fun, learn new things. Anything is possible. The outside world may be falling apart, but everything is pristine on the network. Leave your old life behind and start the life you've always wanted to have. Leave the crumbling world behind and join the network. Choose your new life. Be who you want to be. The network, brought to you by the agency.
Wasn't that just great? Seems almost too good to be true, doesn't it? What is? The network is an evil corporation. This isn't funny. I don't know why. So, this obviously is pure propaganda. Personally, I hate what the network has done to the world. The real world. The world we truly live in. Ever since the network was created, people have been using the network more and more, relying on it for everything they do in life. They can't live without it. It's come to the point that people spend more time in the network than they do in real life. And the real world is suffering because of that. While we spend time in this virtual, fake world, we're losing what really makes us human. We used to have a life outside of the network, a physical life, one that we would interact with other humans. Now what do we have? Do we even know who we are anymore? The network strips away what makes us human and replaces it with a thin veneer of deception, phoniness. We all know that who we are on the network isn't who we truly are. People have become so reliant and completely dependent on the network that they literally cannot live without it. They don't know what to do. They can't do anything without it percolating through every single pore and fiber of their being. For many people, they don't even know what the real world is anymore. To them, the network is the real world. We need to show people what matters. We need to show them that this is fake. This is not real. This is the real world. No. I can see you're obviously not getting it. And as much as I hate to do this, you're leaving me no choice. I have to show you the network.
Alright, I'll admit, the network may seem cool on the surface, but it would cost you humanity. Not only are you losing a part of yourself, but you're also giving up control of your own life to the agency. They know everything that goes on here. Okay, you've seen enough. I can't stay here long. They're probably tracking me. Oh shit. It's time. We need to get out of here right now. No, we're coming for you! You guys get further away! The network is fake!
How's everybody doing? My My name is Adam Grayson, and I'm presenting a game called The Network. So, hopefully you saw from that skit we did, the tone that we're going for is complete and utter reliance on technology. And we think that's pretty interesting, especially because we can see that even now. I mean, you know, all of us at FIEA, what would you guys do if we didn't have internet for like a week? You know, we all complain that the wireless is so slow, and you know, you can see that here and now. In the game, however, you know, it's much more severe. It's set in the future. Everything is literally based around the network. So we're going to have dual worlds in the game. You're going to have the real world as well as the network. The real world is basically falling apart. People don't use it anymore. Really, the only reason they're there is because they are still partly biological beings. You know, they need to eat, they need to drink and stuff. But they don't really care to spend time in the real world. You know, it's falling apart. Nobody wants to be there. Nobody's taking care of it. And then the network, you know, nice and shiny. You can do basically whatever you want. So why spend time in the real world? So the gameplay is going to be based around free running / parkour platforming. So if anybody's played Mirror's Edge, it's going to be very similar to that. So why are you running? You are running away from these guys, the agents. They're employees of this evil corporation that's in charge of the network called the agency. So what they do is they chase you. They try to kill you. You are a rebel, and you are trying to take down the agency, and they don't want you to do that, so they send their minions after you. So you're going to be running across real-world rooftops. You're going to be running inside of the network, and you're going to be escaping these guys. So you don't have any weapons per se against these, which is mainly why you're running. You're trying to escape them. However, your one form of combat, if you will, it's called hacking. So what hacking is, you can hack an enemy by running up to them, and you know, you press a button, and then all of a sudden time sort of freezes, and you dive into their digital consciousness. So we have a video for that right here. So say, do that one more time. Nathan over here is an agent. I'm the main character. I'm running towards him, and all of a sudden I hack him. And so I dive into his digital consciousness, and we get presented with this very abstract platforming level. However, time is still moving very, very slowly in the real world. So like, moving very slowly, very slowly, we're almost hugging each other. All right, then hacked him. All right, so he's down on the ground. There you go. So you can hack different body parts of the agents and make them. And that has different effects. If you hack the legs, that makes them collapse. If you hack their arms, they drop weapons and whatnot. If you hack their heads, you know, they become unconscious. Next slide, thank you. All right, so what is the network going to offer the different tracks? For our track, obviously, there are going to be two very different art styles, one for the real world and one for the network. So that should be a big draw, hopefully. I know I'm interested in it. There's going to be mocap involved. So we're going to do that, and obviously cleaning up the mocap, doing animations for that. And the level design for both artists and producers. The way the levels are going to work inside hacking environments is that they're going to be randomly generated. So say we build 50 different sets. We're going to have them randomly generated in order, as well as how they connect to each other. So that's going to be hopefully fun for both artists to create and producers to design. And then, sorry. Programmers are going to have a play in that as well, because they're obviously going to make that work. For programmers as well, one thing they're going to need to focus on is making the parkour fun to free run. So what I mean by that is, you know, we're running along, it's going to be a first-person camera. We can't have the camera being very, very shaky. We need to be able to see what we're doing, especially if we're doing flips, barrel rolls, all that good stuff. And so that's it for that. And before we get into questions, we have one more message from the agency that we would like to convey to them.
network. It is a place where all your dreams come true, whether they be about dragon riding, cuddling with corgis, attending Murray, or Scott. Choose your new life. Be who you are. Isn't it time to join the network?
Are there any questions? Yeah.
So within the context of network, is there, like, if you're holding hands with running, how does that contribute to taking down the agency, which is that assuming the goal, right? Sorry.
So you're going to be running through different levels in the network. At the end of each level is going to be a piece of evidence that will help you expose the agency for what it is. That's one way of taking down the agency. The other way is doing so by hacking, taking down the agents. So when you go into the digital subconsciousness of these agents, you run through their minds, you hack different body parts, and you escape them or dispose of them. Yes, Kyle.
I was wondering how it's not going there. So I know that like the others of course they could run for it, but we can also like push different buttons to this and stuff like that.
Yeah. Glad you asked. Okay, so it's going to be context sensitive in that, so say I have this small kind of hurdle. I'm going to do different animations depending on how fast I'm moving towards it. If I'm walking towards it, I'm just going to kind of climb on top of it and go over it. If I am jogging towards it, maybe I'll hop up like this. Or if I'm just sprinting, I'm going to just jump right over it. So yes, I'm sorry, it will be button presses, but it will do different things depending on how fast you move and what set piece it is. Yes, Tom.
Will you be having, when you're hacking an agent, and you have this difference in time, and you switch to a first-person type of thing, how were you thinking of representing that time lapse on the screen while you're in a first-person running mode?
So when we're in the first person, we're obviously not going to have a lot of things around us. However, since we are making this in a digital world, a digital setting, we could throw things up on the screen. You may have prosthetic eyes, say. So while it's technically not like a GUI or a HUD, you can still have that fictional excuse of seeing things on the screen. So what would happen is, as the agent gets closer and closer to hitting you, that's basically your time limit, right? And so you start seeing glitches on the screen, and eventually it just gets so cluttered that you can't see anything, and you fail the hack. Right.
I know you talk a lot about the gameplay of inside the network. There's going to be a lot of parkouring. What is it going to be like in the real world? And if it's going to be the same, are you going to have different elements in the gameplay within the network?
So the focus of parkouring in the real world is going to be more slow and exploration based. You parkour through the real world to get to hubs that hold the levels in the network. And then in the network itself, it's going to be more faster paced, more twitch based. You're going to be running across, in the term, for hacking, you're going to be running across randomly generated levels. When you're in the network itself, they're not going to be randomly generated, but they're going to involve much faster moving than both hacking and the real world. And there's going to be moving components, whereas in the other two, most things are going to be stationary.
And they're going to be a lot more linear in the
Right,
network
right.
because you have more of a goal in the network because you're going to get a piece of information, for example. And so there's a predefined way to get there. Maybe there's multiple paths like in Sonic. But in the real world, it's more open. You're going to go to these nodes to hack into these private networks. But you don't have to go to them 1, 2, 3. You can sort of explore maybe 3, 1, 2. Depends how you get the evidence.
Yes.
If you go to engage an enemy with a hack and you fail, What are the negative repercussions? How do you come back?
So that's kind of getting into some story we haven't settled on yet. Originally, if you failed at hack, you would die, essentially. And the original mechanic for coming back to life would be backup bodies. And so you would be sent into a new body with new skill sets, perhaps none if you haven't built that up yet. But we've been changing the story around a little. So I think right now, what I would say is that you get hurt and it stuns you. And if you get hurt up, you die. Yes?
I get that you're drawing a lot of gameplay inspiration from Mirror's Edge, but how do you expect to differentiate the network from Mirror's Edge besides the storyline?
Well, storyline is definitely one of the things. The dual world setting, that plays into the storyline, but I think that will also play into the mechanics as well. Like I said, Mirror's Edge is very linear, right? They presented it in such a way that it could have been an open world, but it wasn't. So we're going to have both. We're going to have an open world as well as linear parts. Yes?
I have two questions. The first one's very short. Agents, when they're coming after you, I mean, I assume they won't always just be going to punch you. Sometimes they're going to shoot you. So do you have to be within melee reach to hack an agent?
There are going to be certain things in the game that extend the range. When you start off, it's going to be fairly short, but you will have power-ups that extend the range. So yes.
And the second one, real quick, was what reward do you get from wandering the world? So in a lot of big free-roaming worlds like big Fallout, you can go to storyline locations, or you can just go somewhere else, and it's fun, and there are other things to get. Are you going to implement that kind of thing in this?
Yes. So we're going to orient not only hacking and the network, but also the real world in such a way that it is fun to just free roam, to navigate around the world. And we're also figuring that we're going to place certain power-ups like hidden, so you do want to explore other than just having fun. Yes.
Free running in a closed environment is incredibly difficult to achieve and make it seamless, let alone an open environment. I was wondering if you had a contingency plan in case of this.
In case of what?
In case you're unable to achieve this free running.
I don't know if I follow you, so say Assassin's Creed, would you say that failed in it? Or Prince of Persia, or Mirror's Edge again?
Well, I know that Prince of Persia, the developers that talked about how difficult it was to make it appear seamless. I wonder if you had a plan in case like
in case we weren't able to keep the flow of running.
Right.
I suppose we would. I mean, if that failed, we could still do parkour, but we would just have to focus less on maintaining your speed, and we would change direction. Obviously, maintaining speed is a big part of the context-sensitive jumping and platforming. So, yeah, we would have to change that up.
It's still a platformer. The parkouring is a way of getting around the platformer. If the parkouring fails, you still have a platformer to fall back on. And yes, it won't be the same, but that's because the game is sort of designed around parkouring. So yes, if a major section of the game fails, the game's not going to be the same. But I think that's the same for any game.
Essentially, I think it would become more scripted as opposed to more dynamic. You'd actually have to script out certain ledges and or sections to actually make the parkouring effective and actually feel right and feel real.
Right. So, like in certain games, like Zelda, you come to an edge and you are scripted to jump rather than it being more dynamic. Yes.
Question from the tubes of the interweb. Someone wants to know, I don't know if you mentioned it, is it first-person perspective?
Yes.
Okay.
That's easy.
Well, there's more in here, but...
You talked a lot about these open world and then these hubs for the network. Are you worried this might be getting out of scope for what we can do for a capstone project?
Yes. I am worried about that. Fortunately, we've actually done a lot of narrowing in terms of the scope. So, for example, when I was originally thinking of this game, I thought, huge open world, then you would have what are called terminals, which are the way you access the network. And the network itself would be yet another hub to the levels inside the network. So basically, you would have 3 different worlds. Now we're thinking, that's way too big, obviously. So instead of having these 3 different worlds, we're just going to have 2. You go from the real world, access the terminal, and you are at the level.
And keep in mind that in the network, the levels are procedurally generated, so you don't have to have a designer script out all of that.
Right. Yes, Jesse?
In the open world, are you guys thinking or planning of having other sort of things to do or other people to interact with, or is it more of a mission kind of level based, from here to there?
Yeah, mainly it's going to be mission-based, mission-driven, but there are going to be other people around. There are going to be not only agents, but just normal people, doing their everyday thing. And if you want, you can hack them just for fun. I mean, like in GTA, you can run over pedestrians. Just a little extra thing for the player to do. And then, yes, exploration again. So, JC.
So the network is evil, right?
Yes.
And the protagonist is against the network.
Yes.
Why does the protagonist use the network to fight bad guys?
Good question. He has no other way of taking down the agency.
Okay.
He is himself prosthetic. He has prosthetic limbs, and obviously prosthetic necessary to have his brain go into the network. So because it is a purely digital construct, there's no other way to do it.
Okay.
One more. Who wants to ask it? Ben.
Very good. Very good?
Yeah,
pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah. I'm strong.
Thanks for asking.
Hey, Blake. No, I was sorry.
Oh, okay.